And welcome in to yet another episode of the Blitz podcast. I'm your host today, Mr. Kane Schwartz, and I'm joined by a dude on who I'm excited to do another episode with, man, and is Mr. Tyler North, rocking the Q's pullover today, kind of looking pretty clean in that. But we were talking about some baseball pre-podcast, and it's tough. It's tough days in Baltimore, man. We cannot.
We were
do anything.
We were going down the tunnel of what was the Orioles roster like back in 2018 and 2019 when the days weren't good. Orioles are down 6-0 right now in the bottom of the third. So baseball season might be closing the door in the DMV here within the next couple hours. But hey, 100-win season, that's nothing short of extraordinary, especially for that team. And as young as they are, you got to expect they're going to be back here soon. But no, we had another exciting weekend of football, and
yes, sir.
I was thinking about it today. We can start to look at a playoff picture. Like, this is the time of the year, I think, when you're like, all right, what's the current playoff picture look like? And there's some crazy teams that are, like, I guess currently in the playoffs. Like the Bucks are in the playoffs, and I think there's some teams in the wild card that you wouldn't really expect to be there either. Like the whole AFC South is completely up for grabs, which I know we'll dive into as well.
For grabs, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, no, I was looking at that earlier, and I was like, yeah, this is, I guess, the time of the year when you start deciding, all right, do I want my team to tank, or are we going to make a playoff push here this year? So I know we'll dive into it, but that was just something that came off the top of my head earlier when I was looking through some of the storylines, I guess, from this past week.
No, yeah, for sure. Like, I agree with you. Like, we're at that point where we're far enough from week one that it's not overreaction season anymore. Like, we've actually seen what we're going to see for the rest of the season for the most part. So, like you said, we could start throwing together a playoff picture, some legitimate power rankings, teams that could make a end of season playoff push. I mean, it's exciting times, man, as we dive into this past week of NFL action. So, without further ado, man, let's dive into it. And we got to start with what probably was the most impressive performance of this past weekend of NFL football, and that is the 49ers, man, absolutely trouncing the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. And final score in that one, dude, I mean, it was ridiculous, 42-10 against a Cowboys team that was expected to be one of the powerhouses in the NFC. I mean, I didn't buy into that personally before the season. And Jaden was running his victory laps for 4 weeks. And, I mean, I couldn't be more sick about it, so I can't wait to get him on another podcast episode to talk to him about that. But we're talking about the fucking 49ers because they've been balling out. I mean, they're undefeated right now. They're one of 2 teams that are undefeated, but they're definitely more impressive than the Eagles so far this season. I mean, the Eagles have done their thing, but the Niners have absolutely dominated so far. I mean, CMC has a chance at an MVP case, I think, this year if he keeps doing what he's doing. Brock Purdy looked fantastic against the Dallas Cowboys.
It's Brocktober. It's Brocktober, man. He is absolutely killing it right now. This is no longer he's just in there to not lose games. I mean, he's going out there and winning games. Now, the one thing I'm going to still say about Brock Purdy is he hasn't been in that game where it's like, hey, 2-minute drive, we're tied, you got to go down and get us a field goal, or we're losing by 3, we got to tie this game or win this game now. I haven't seen that yet. So it's tough for me to sit there and say, like, he's one of these upper-tier, upper-echelon quarterbacks until I see that moment. But, I mean, in every game that he hasn't torn his UCL, he's won. So I just got to keep going off of what's there. And, I think he was like, 17 of 24 or something with 4 touchdowns the other night. I mean,
ridiculous.
Just ridiculously efficient. But also, I mean, some of the throws he was making were incredible as well. And, I mean, yeah, it was the impressive win, but I'm with you, man. I'm off this Cowboys bandwagon. I'm done believing that the Cowboys are going to be that good. And you mentioned it, and I haven't been on an episode with you, so I have to give you your credit where credit's due. And you called the fuck out of the Cardinals beating the Cowboys. I asked for your mortal lock that week, and you said Cardinals money line, and I laughed. Little did I know they were going to kick the shit out of Dallas. So I think that as impressive as that win was, I just don't think this Cowboys team is that good. And I was listening to somebody say, well, he was like, oh, I saw this coming. I think it might have been Nick Wright, where he was like, oh, I saw this coming from a mile away. Arizona beat Dallas by 12, and Arizona lost to San Francisco by 19. That adds up to 31, and they won by 32. So basically, that's exactly where that math comes in. But
Yeah.
Dak, I saw the stat. Since Dak signed his contract, he's played in 38 games, and he has 34 interceptions.
Oh, bro. Like,
that is abysmal, man. That's almost an interception a game. And if you're getting paid as like a top 5, top 7 quarterback, whatever he is, you got to be producing a little bit more than that. I mean, we're talking about Brock Purdy not going out and losing games. He's putting up crazy stats. Maybe Dak Prescott needs to take one out of his book and just not lose games, because we saw that in the first couple weeks. They didn't need him. They relied on the defense.
no.
Now they need him, and he is not performing at all.
No. I mean, he's been horrific, dude. It's like he came into the season and said, I'm not throwing 10 interceptions this year. Okay.
Threw 3.
Yeah, he threw 3 in one game, and it was ugly, dude. Like that overthrow, that was terrible.
That was 10 or 15 yards.
Exactly, dude.
It was, and I think that, you know, we discussed this a little bit, you and I did, about whether or not Dak is that guy, because Jerry Jones keeps saying, oh, he can go out and win a Super Bowl. That's just an owner being caught up in his own cloud, I guess you can say, in his own aurora, where he's just like,
it's Jerry Jones.
Yeah, he's so oblivious to everything else that's going. It's like you have to look at the landscape of quarterback in this league, and Dak Prescott's not up there with it. Like, I wouldn't even put him like top 15 right now. Maybe top 20. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he is just.
It comes
when
down to
Trayvon Diggs got hurt. When Trayvon Diggs got hurt, you said that it was going to, carry into that game against Cardinals. I didn't think it was. I still thought that on paper they were a really good defense, and their offense was still going to be just as good, with the line that they've got and the playmakers that they've got. But, man, Brandon Cooks has done nothing. I don't even know if he's on the field. I haven't really heard much of Michael Gallup. They're really missing Dalton Schultz, in my opinion. I know Jake Ferguson has some touchdowns, but I think they're really missing Dalton Schultz. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they're getting torched in the air, man.
Yep.
And Bland got hurt last night too. I think it's going to be a rough sledding here for the Cowboys. I still think they're good enough to make the playoffs, but man, this is not what you were looking for if you're a Cowboys fan.
No, but it is what you were looking for if you were a 49ers fan, because not only do you beat the crap out of the other team that was favored in the NFC as one of the top dogs, you prove yourself as the solidified number 1 in the NFC right now. And let me ask you this, man. I mean, you brought this question up. Do we think that the Niners have a legitimate chance at going undefeated this year? I mean, this team is so good. They've been balling out, and they've got the 10th toughest strength of schedule going forward. But for this team, they're probably favored in every single one of those matchups. And if Brock Purdy can continue to do what he's doing and rely on the production that you're getting from CMC and rely on this defense, which is ranked number 1 on PFF right now, I think this team does have a legitimate shot at going 17-0. What do you think?
I think that they've got I think out of them and the Eagles, as far as the undefeated teams that have a chance, I think it's definitely the 49ers. It's funny that I mentioned that. Circle your calendar for December 3rd, 49ers at Eagles. That might be the only game that they're not favored in. Other than that, the big games that they've got the Bengals and the Ravens, but they're both in San Fran. And then they go on the road to Jacksonville. Obviously, they've still got some of the divisional games, but there's teams like the Browns, the Vikings. Yes, that hurts. The Bucks. At the Seahawks could be tricky.
Yeah.
They've got the Cardinals again. They've got the Commanders. They've got the Rams. I don't really see much besides the Eagles game. Maybe the Ravens or the Bengals catch them on a bad week in San Fran, but it's at home, so I think that they still got the advantage. That December 3rd game, and that not only could decide whether or not which team goes undefeated the rest of the way, but it also is going to probably decide the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing how this 49ers team keeps on rolling throughout the season. We talked about Brock Purdy. I mean, he was fantastic on Sunday night. And this Kyle Shanahan offense has never needed to rely on the quarterback. I mean, you look at Jimmy G, dude. Like, what Jimmy G, he brought them to the Super Bowl. And I'd argue that Brock Purdy is better than that Jimmy G that took that team to the Super Bowl. So
Jimmy G was much more limited in what he could do compared to Purdy. And Purdy, it's fun. It's so crazy to think about. He's the least highest paid quarterback, starting quarterback in the NFL.
He's making less than $1 million.
And yeah, it's ridiculous. And to be honest, the 49ers are so lucky that this is working out with Purdy, because what they did with the whole Trey Lance situation is awful. That also is another question. Do we see Trey Lance at any time here this year? I don't think we do, but
I mean, in late games
you
like
got to
last
start
night,
asking these questions.
or not last night, but 2 nights ago on Sunday Night Football, exactly. You need to start asking these questions because it's like that seemed like the perfect time to put Trey Lance in. I mean, you're going against your former team, and I know they put in Cooper Rush at some point, but you know that Trey Lance has the potential. So you knew you were out of that game anyway. So, like, why not see what Trey Lance has? And they didn't want to go to him. And that surprised me because what Jerry Jones said when they acquired Trey Lance. And it was he kind of alluded to having future plans with Trey Lance as possible QB1. So that could still be in play. I don't think it happens this year, but I mean, if Jerry Jones has a very short leash, dude, and if
they miss the playoffs, Dax, you can't move forward with him as your quarterback like that. I mean, how many more chances are you going to give this guy?
It's ridiculous.
I would say the 49ers have about a 30 to 35% chance to go undefeated. I would put it in that just because they do have some teams like the Bengals, Ravens, Jags, Eagles on their schedule that could beat them.
Yeah.
But in the crazy, like you're talking about MVP, Brock Purdy is like, I think 7-1 right now. He's like the third or fourth best odds to win MVP. But we had this conversation. He might not even be the best player on his team.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because you've got Trent Williams, who's the best tackle in the game, Fred Warner, who's the best middle linebacker in the game. Nick Bosa might be the best defensive end. It's up for debate, him and Parsons and Garrett, Watt, just to name a couple.
I mean, you mentioned Bosa, bro. Like, Bosa has not. I mean, he's been good this year. Don't get me wrong.
They haven't needed it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he only has 2 sacks so far this year. This point last season, he had 6, and he won Defensive Player of the Year. So they don't even need Nick Bosa to step up right now. I mean, he's playing great football either way, but this team is. I mean, you drop off one piece. I will say, if they lose CMC, who has had an injury history, if they lose CMC at some point, they could run into some troubles. But unless that happens,
you still got Elijah Mitchell, who is a veteran back. I'm not saying he's CMC by any means, but like you would be depending on Brock Purdy a little bit more, and then we would really start to find out. But they've only had one game that was one possession, and that was against the Rams, and that's because the Rams kicked a field goal as time expired to lose by 7 instead of 10.
Yeah.
Other than that, they've won 30-7, 30-12, 35-16, 42-10. They've scored at least 30 points in every single game, which is incredible to think about.
This 49ers team is balling, and we definitely think that they have a shot at 17-0. So, all right, let's dive into the next topic of debate that we got here, and that is Chicago still in the mix for Caleb Williams? I mean, that was the dead set conclusion after the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season. I mean, Justin Fields didn't look like he belonged on a football field. Looked like he was confused. I mean, this whole Bears organization was in an absolute dumpster fire until Justin Fields really started to pick it up. I mean, against Denver, they still lost that game in epic fashion, just like the Bears ought to do. But over the last 2 games, Justin Fields has thrown for 617 yards with 8 tuds and an interception. I mentioned Denver. The second game was against the Commanders, which hurt me very much. I don't know how we allow 40 points to the Chicago Bears, but that is neither here nor there. Anyway, Justin Fields has looked great in these past 2 games. Granted, not against the highest level of competition, but you don't have to answer this question today because there's a lot of season left. Justin Fields still has to do it for the rest of the season, but if Justin Fields plays, I don't think he keeps this pace up because this is incredible. But if he plays like similar to what he has been in the past 2 games, I mean, do you start to have a question mark? Because regardless, the Panthers surrendered their pick this year to Chicago in the DJ Moore Bryce Young trade, basically. So you've got Carolina's pick, which is probably going to be number 1 because they're the only team with 0 wins so far this year. And then Chicago's pick is projected at 3. So personally, I don't think you can pass up on Caleb Williams. I think you got to take him with one of those picks. But what happens with Justin Fields then? Do you trade him to get back up?
Dallas.
Ooh, that would be crazy, bro. Trey Lance and Justin Fields in the same offense. That'd be kind of wild.
I understand what you're saying, but I think if you've got the chance we were talking about a generational talent with Caleb Williams, I don't see how you can pass up that opportunity. You passed it up this year with the quarterbacks. Okay, I get that. Bryce Young, Stroud, Richardson, good,
Mm-hmm.
maybe can turn this franchise around, but they're not like Caleb Williams. I mean, he's going to come into the league and be a top 10, maybe top 5 quarterback
Yep.
instantly, like right away. So I think you've got to take him. If you don't, then you got to get a king's ransom. I mean, you've got to get anything and everything. Like 3 first-round picks is what I would be looking at, something in that realm. The Panthers and Bears play each other. And it as a fan of this team, this is going to hurt me to say, but the only team that could get that number 1 pick besides the Bears is probably the Vikings.
Yeah.
And the Vikings,
Damn.
and I know this is a topic that we're going to hop into, and honestly, we can probably segue into that too, but the Vikings and Bears play each other this week. My God, am I a Bears fan. I want the Bears to win this game so bad. Just keep tanking Vikings. Just keep getting a better pick. The Panthers and Bears play later in the year as well, in like 3 or 4 weeks. If the Bears beat the Vikings and the Panthers beat the Bears, I think the Panthers would still have the tiebreaker, so the Vikings would need them to still win a game. I do think there's an outside chance for the Vikings, but I would put it as like a 95% chance that the Bears end up with the number 1 pick. Like, I don't think that there's a realistic chance, because the Vikings already beat the Panthers. If the Panthers had beaten the Vikings would be well in line for this number 1 pick. And with the injury to Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins trade talks, it would make so much sense to just keep tanking. Because they don't have that right now, like a guarantee that they're going to get the number 1 pick, that's where this whole, do we trade Cousins, do we bring back Jefferson, all that starts to be questioned. So I think you trade Fields and you take you take Caleb Williams if you have the number 1 pick. As far as spots that Fields could go, I don't know. New England,
Atlanta, with their running scheme, I think that looks pretty good. I think he's a pretty good fit there. I mean, he's basically the plus version of Desmond Ridder, you know. And if Arthur Smith loves Desmond Ridder so much, then Justin Fields should be a perfect fit in Atlanta, you know.
Yeah. He's a rich man's Desmond Ridder. That's for daggone. He thrown for 8 touchdowns and 600 yards the past 2 games, and he's I'm not going to say a run first quarterback, but he's a dual threat as they come.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think with the Bears, you got to take Caleb if you're there, and if you're not, or if you want to get out of it, man, you got to get everything that's going to completely change this entire franchise around.
Yep. For sure. I totally agree. You cannot pass up on a Caleb Williams when he comes to you, like, because you could roll the dice on Justin Fields just like you've been doing these past few years, and he could suck again next year. Like, he could open up the first 3 weeks of the season the same way he did this year, and then you're in the same shit show that you've been operating out of. So I think you got to take Caleb Williams, and even if Carolina's pick or Chicago's pick doesn't end up at 1, then I think you got to trade up to 1. I think that you've got the assets to do it. I think you get rid of both those top 5 picks, maybe plus Justin Fields for the number 1 overall pick. I don't know. That would be a serious haul for whoever gets the number 1 pick, but I think it's worth it for a guy like Caleb Williams. So,
okay, what if the Vikings were to get the number 1 pick? Would they trade Justin Fields to the Vikings?
What do you think of that?
In division, I can't see them doing it in division, but man, that would be pretty exciting as a Vikings fan to have him in Jefferson on the field at the same time. I got to imagine, and we can talk about, the Kirk Cousins trade talks now, but I got to imagine that, after this year, the Vikings are going to move on from Cousins. Like, the way this season is shaping up, it's just going to end on a sour note, unfortunately, because he's been a great guy, not only for the team, but like the city and everything. And like, I saw him at the Twins playoff game, just went with his family and just sat in the outfield, like didn't sit in like the club seats or, first row behind the dugout. Sat in the outfield with his kids and put a hat on and some sunglasses on to try and disguise himself.
That's classic Kirk, though. Like, if you watch the quarterback documentary, like, that guy. I became such a Kirk Cousins fan after that documentary, and I miss him so much in Washington, dude. It's crazy. But
and trust me, there's teams that would kill to have Kirk Cousins, which I know is what's going to happen. There's going to be a team that's like, let me go out and get a veteran quarterback for a year or two, that's in a win-now mode but needs a quarterback. But yeah, the Vikings are going to have a lot of questions. You could go with the Kyler route. You could go with drafting Drake May. If you don't get Caleb Williams, maybe you look at Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I don't know what route they're going to go. I think a lot of it is going to depend on whether or not they can sign Justin Jefferson to a long-term deal.
Yep.
And that's the thing right now, because Jefferson, if you were unaware, Justin Jefferson been put on IR, so he's at least out for the next 4 weeks with the hamstring injury.
Yep.
If the Vikings were to lose, they got the Bears this week and then the 49ers next week. I think they lose both those, and I think they're 1-6. If they're 1-6, why even bring him back this year?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
the
big question. As I wrote down J Jeff out for 4 weeks, and then we're talking about the Kirk Cousins trade talk. I mean, even if Kirk doesn't get shipped out, with how expensive Justin Jefferson's going to be, you got to just sit him out for the rest of the season. I think that's the only move.
Yeah, they've got at the Bears, 49ers at home, at the Packers, at the Falcons, Saints at home. None of those are 100% wins. They're winnable games. Yeah. 3 or 4 of them are. Mm-hmm. But, if you're a Vikings fan like myself, you kind of just hope they're going to lose these. It becomes more clear on what the direction this team is heading, because right now I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do, because I could see them going, in those 5 games, let's say they beat the Bears or the Packers, one of those, and then let's say they beat the Saints. Well, then they're 3 and whatever that would be, 3 and 7, I think is what they would be at that point. And it's like, we're just bad enough where we're not going to get a top pick, but we're not good enough to make a playoff run here. And we've shot ourselves in the foot and screwed any chance that we had at getting this generational talent. We've screwed it up. And just typical Vikings.
Yeah, do you think there's a chance that they could completely turn it around? Because this is a team that did win the division last season by a significant
and what they do
margin.
last year? What they do last year? They went 11-0 in one-score games. And what are they this year? They're 1-4. And what's their record? 1-4. Coincidentally enough, that whole pendulum has just completely flipped the other way. And that's what I said coming into this season. I said Vikings were 11-0 in one-score games last year. If you cut that number in half, that's 5 to 6 less wins. Instead of 13-4, they're 7-10. So my prediction is coming into this year was 7-10, maybe 8-9. And that's what I told Jaden when we did the podcast. And it's because you got to come back down to that average at some point in time. And we're seeing it. They're arguably a flag away from maybe beating the Chiefs. Who knows? They're definitely a catch away, a TJ Hawkinson catch away from beating the Chargers. They're an interception in the red zone away from beating the Bucks. So they could very easily be 3-2, maybe 4-1 if everything went right.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's the thing, is they're not bad enough
to
be that bad. That's the aggravating part. But now we have our chance with Jefferson out and the opportunity to trade Kirk to be that bad.
That's a good point.
But if you're going to trade Kirk Cousins, and Jaden keeps talking about trade Kirk Cousins for Zach Wilson. If you're going to trade Kirk Cousins for Zach Wilson, all you're doing is just oozing mediocrity, because Zach Wilson will be able to get a win or two probably with the Vikings and screw us out of a top pick.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're gonna go full tank, stop trying to figure out if there's something there with Zach Wilson. There's not. Just tank. Just start Jaron Hall at quarterback. Try and win every game that you can. aka just lose every game. Don't bring back Jefferson. Just say, hey, we're giving you a fat contract. And Caleb Williams, I think, came out and I don't know if it was a spoof of an account or what, but he came out and said the Vikings are one of the teams that he would go to.
Why doesn't that make sense? That makes perfect sense. You link up with the best wide receiver in football, and you got a contract. Jefferson's going to get a contract. Yeah, exactly, dude. This is a team just waiting for a quarterback once Kirk heads out of town, and I think Caleb is a perfect fit.
Well, I love how this has become the Caleb. Well, this is the time of the year that we're going to talk about this stuff. This has been the Caleb Williams show for sure. But it begs the question: does he come out if the Bears have the number 1 pick, or does he go back to college? Because he could probably get a couple million to go back to USC for another year, press his luck, and maybe get put in a better situation.
That's a good point.
Who knows? And then what do the Bears do? Are they just like, hey, we're going to keep going with Justin Fields because I don't think we should take a chance on Drake May or Bo Nix? I think we should just go forward with this.
Down the road another year. Oh my god, dude, I can't imagine. The Bears need to draft Caleb Williams, but I think the Vikings are in a great spot to do whatever they're going to do going into the future. I mean, they've got the money to pay Jefferson, and once you pay Jefferson, then everything's just kind of you'll figure it out as you go from there.
But you got to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And he's, in my opinion, if I'm him, I'm not signing that contract if I don't know what the quarterback plan is.
Yeah.
That's why you need to tell him either there's 3 options. Either A, you're going to move forward with Kirk Cousins for another year or 2. I don't think that's going to happen. B, you tank and you go out and get Caleb Williams, or maybe you draft a Drake May or Bo Nix. Or C, you go out and get like a Kyler Murray. That would be the options that I would tell Justin Jefferson that, hey, here's what we're planning on doing.
Yep.
We want to sign you to a long-term deal. Which of these options do you want? I would straight up ask him. I'd be like, what do you want?
Why not?
Who do you want throwing the ball to?
Yeah, I mean, he's the franchise guy. You got to get his input on who the next quarterback is going to be, because if you do sign him to a contract that is probably going to be like 6 years or something crazy for the most money you've ever seen for a wide receiver, you got to let the guy know who the quarterback's going to be. But this begs the question, man, before we move on from the Kirk Cousins talk, what is a good fit for Kirk Cousins this year? Because we talked about the Jets. I think that if the Jets were going to do something, they would have done it already, man. That's my opinion. Like, I think they're still in it. They're, like, still somewhat
Do you think,
in it.
let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Do you think they're just, like, blindly optimistic that Rodgers is going to come back?
I don't think it's even blind optimism, dude. I really...
You think he's actually... From a torn Achilles, do you think he's going to come back in 4 or 5 months?
I mean, we saw Cam Akers come back. We
need Mitch on the episode right now to dissect all this anatomy talk.
Well, I want to hear Mitchell's thoughts on like the revolutionary Achilles surgery that he had, because he replaced his Achilles with like a replacement Achilles basically until his shit like basically grows back. I don't even know, but
it's that ayahuasca, man.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like, he was supposed to be in a boot still at this time. He was like basically sprint walking up the sideline in crutches the other night.
Yep.
So it's like he's obviously making a lot more progress than you would expect. We saw Cam Akers come back earlier than ever from an Achilles injury. Now, it would be a lot faster for Rodgers, but who's to know? It's been like 2 years since the Akers injury. So it's like, given his age, does make it a little tougher. But I really do think that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back this season. And that is a reason why I think because Kirk, the fun part about this, has a no trade clause. So it's like,
right.
I don't think he's going to, I heard Cam Newton, Cam Newton's basically tripping today. But
I heard him say basically, are you going to have me come in and start? And then when Rodgers comes healthy, just come back in.
Bingo.
Like, I don't want to sign a deal to do that.
Bingo.
And he's like, or you're going to sign me to like a backup quarterback position, and I'm not going to do that either.
Bingo.
I don't know if I've ever seen a situation like this in football where you could possibly. And talking about Cam Akers, the difference there is that that's a running back that needs his Achilles for the explosive part. Rodgers, I'm not going to say he can't run because he does have some elusiveness to him, but he doesn't depend on that. Yeah. He's not going to need that explosiveness from the quarterback position, which is why I guess he could come back earlier than anticipated. It would be wild if they were, 2 weeks away from the season ending and they needed to win out to make the playoffs and he came back like right around Christmas time. That would be absolutely insane. And right now they're like a game out of the wild card. Like, they're right there in the thick of the wild card with all these other teams.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, me and Jaden talked about last week how Zach Wilson can do enough for this team just to keep them afloat. And then once Aaron Rodgers comes back, just let go of the reins and let him take over. But this is the reason why Kirk Cousins won't go to the Jets, because there's a lot up in the air right now, and I just don't think that that's the place for him to go. I saw Bleacher Report came out with an article like 6 hours ago of the top 4 teams that they think he might end up with. Washington was on that list. It makes sense because he's been there. He's comfortable there. He's probably got people that he knows there because he spent many years in Washington. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't want us to do that. We're the projected sixth pick in the draft right now. So I think we just ride that out. I think Howe will continue to improve as the season goes on. And he's been good so far. Like, he's obviously had his moments.
He's had moments.
Yeah. He's had his moments
ups
of
and
good.
Downs, what you'd expect.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you'd expect that from essentially a rookie quarterback. Like, you're going to have those moments where you're like, what the f- are you doing? And then you're like, holy shit, this guy can actually ball.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying there. I do think Washington's got some appeal because I do think that they've got some playmakers, with Terry and Jahan and Curtis Samuel, among others, and a good running back room as well. So I think that there is an appeal there. But yeah, I don't know if it makes that much sense.
Yeah.
Like I could see people like pushing a lot of things to make it make sense, but like naturally it just doesn't sound like the right fit.
No. I think it's just the no trade clause that holds everything up. Last team I want to mention, then we'll move on. I think the Patriots do make some sense. Now, they are a little bit far out of the race at this point, sitting at 1-4. So it'd be a tough road back even if he brought Kirk Cousins in at this point. But I think he's a simple guy. I think he likes simple things. And I think the Patriots are a simple organization, not in a bad way. But it's military style. It's just about football. Kirk Cousins isn't a flashy guy. So despite the chains on the plane, but Kirk chains.
I guess my question with that is, why not just wait till the regular season's over and then just sign him?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you trade for him, you've got first dibs at doing that, but how much are you going to have to give up to do that? And we can segue into our next question.
Dude, look at the transitions we got going today.
Is Belichick going to be there? You know, like you begged the question, and I've been thinking about. I think we started thinking about this last year because we all said the Patriots weren't going to be that good, and then this year we were like, look, this is going to be the worst team in this division. Like, they're not going to be good at all. And here we are. We're sitting at 1. They're sitting at 1-4. Mac Jones is coming off the worst start that he's ever had, I think, in his entire NFL career, and he just doesn't look like he's that guy. I'm totally off the Mac Jones bandwagon. I pose a question to you. You know, who would you rather have right now, Mac Jones or Zach Wilson? And it's a legitimate question, I think.
Yeah, I think it is a legitimate question. I think right now it's just unfortunate, dude, because Mac Jones was a guy who made a Pro Bowl in his rookie year. They won over 10 games, and they went to the playoffs.
Well, everybody makes the Pro Bowl these days. Tyler Huntley made a Pro Bowl.
Okay, that respect. Okay, but
I mean, if we're gonna talk about Pro Bowls,
okay, respect. It's a fan voted thing
out there.
Yeah, it's a fan voted thing, so respect there. But he did lead a team to the playoffs, like not by himself, but he did take a team to the playoffs in his rookie year, which is very hard to do as a rookie quarterback. So I think you got to start pointing like. You can say Mac Jones all the day long. Like, I think I would rather have Zach Wilson right now, how he's playing. But Mac Jones...
Or Trey Lance.
Yeah, honestly, dude. If we could see how he's been playing recently, if the Cowboys would have given him a shot. But anyway, he's failed to develop Mac Jones. I mean, Mac Jones was a first-round talent, man. I mean, that was pretty much the consensus across the league. It's not like they reached and got Mac Jones. I mean, Mac Jones fell a little bit in the draft, and they happened to snag him in the first round. This is a first-round quarterback. This is a starting-level quarterback in the National Football League, and he just failed to develop him, dude. Like,
I think it just shows you that, like, how hard it is to get a franchise quarterback, because they were just assuming, oh, well, Tom Brady's gone. We're going to draft this guy in the first round, and he's going to be the heir apparent of Tom Brady. He's going to win us a couple Super Bowls, and we're going to be fine. Doesn't work out that easy, and it couldn't happen to a better team than the Patriots, because they have been flourishing for your entire life, almost my entire life. They have been the team, and for them to finally face some adversity and hardship, it is awesome to see. Yeah. And I don't think he's that guy, and I think they're going to have to go right back to the drawing board this offseason and in the draft to figure out who's going to be our franchise quarterback. Because right now, it's not on the roster.
Yeah, no, and I agree. But is Belichick the guy to reconstruct this roster? I don't think he is. Like, I think Belichick... He could still be a great head coach, I think. Like, now that's up for debate. I mean, he hasn't proved that so far this year, and he hasn't really proved that since Brady left. But I think having this guy in the front office being your GM is a problem. I think he's too old. I think he's out of touch. I think he's made a lot of bad moves. I mean, the offensive construction, defense, Belichick's always been a defensive guy. He's made some great defensive pickups. And you can't really blame him for what's going on in the defense so far this year because you got an unfortunate injury with Christian Gonzalez. You got an unfortunate injury with Matthew Judon, two of your biggest defensive players so far this year. So you can't really do anything there. But this offense and construction has never been there. And you got to point your finger at the GM, and that is Bill Belichick. I mean, this team, it's been one of the funniest running jokes of all time in national football. It's the Patriots cannot draft wide receivers. I mean, you got N'Keal Harry, who was a he was a first-round pick back, like...
I believe he was, yeah.
Yeah, back a while ago. But then more recently, Tyquan Thornton. You drafted him in the second round. He was your highest drafted wide receiver since N'Keal Harry. And he looks like he's probably going to end up being a practice squad guy. And you go back to the wide receiver cores with even Brady. Like, he made those guys better. It wasn't like he had a great wide receiver.
Other than Randy Moss.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. And you got Wes Welker, but like it was later on. Like it's just not the roster construction has never been there. Not to mention, you just let Jacoby Myers, who you picked up as an undrafted free agent and was your wide receiver 1 last year and the year before. This is an in-house guy, the first wide receiver that they managed to develop, and they just let him walk in free agency. And now he's balling out for the Raiders. So that's a GM mistake right there. He can't get Ramondre Stevenson going this year, which is shocking to say the least. I mean, he was projected to be one of the best running backs.
He had a great year last year, yeah.
Exactly. And he was projected to be one of the best running backs in fantasy and one of the best running backs in football. So...
and maybe, back to the whole GM standpoint, maybe bringing in Ezekiel Elliott has completely ruined Ramondre Stevenson.
Exactly. Like, it's... the coaching decisions, I think Bill Belichick can still be a good coach in the National Football League, but he's got to move on from New England because he cannot.
I think he just needs to. I think some of these guys just need to start realizing when they've hit a certain age that it's just like, hey, I need to just go and enjoy the rest of life and not worry about coaching. Like, he's not there yet, but I would say probably 2 years from now, Saban's going to be in that same category because it's just like Mac Brown at UNC, same thing. These guys are just old now, and it's like, don't you want to enjoy life?
Yeah.
Like, what's left of it? Because I feel like all you've done your entire life is football and coaching. It's like, retire, have some fun.
You've proved it. What do you have to prove?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
You've done it.
The only thing he's got to prove is that he can do it without Brady, and that is something that will continue to propel him every single year. And he is stubborn as hell, and he's not going to give up coaching until he gets that. And I don't think he's going to get it unless something dramatically changes at the quarterback position.
No, I agree. And I read something earlier that he's trying to chase Don Shula's win record.
Okay.
But that's like, he's got 17 more wins to do that. And, dude, with how this Patriots team looks right now, it's going to take him like 3 years to put that together.
Yeah.
Or longer.
That's what I'm going to say. It's not going to happen this year. It might happen next year.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I could see it maybe happening in the next 2 or 3 years, but yeah, no, that's a good. It's those little things that continue to motivate guys, but it's just like, at what point in time do you just say, you know what, enough's enough? I gotta just hang it up and call it quits.
Yeah, and I think it's just about time for that. And Bill Belichick, I mean, all of New England right now is calling for Belichick's head, which hasn't happened in a very long time. So.
Yeah, I saw him. What was he doing? He was picking up like donuts or something at a fast food place. Did you see that? Yeah. It was just like, this guy's in here looking for his next quarterback, not ordering donuts. I was like, yeah, it's probably right, to be honest.
Oh my god, dude! Hand the fucking cashier a play sheet. Hey man, what do you think of this? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
He's almost gotten to that point in his career where he's just going to start asking fans for their advice.
I mean, maybe he's just losing it in general. But anyway, Bill Belichick, I think his time is finally coming to an end in New England. And as you mentioned, can't be more happier because it's finally over, dude. Or it's almost over. The Patriots dynasty is pretty much toast. So. Yeah,
I mean, I think we can kind of close that chapter out now. Like,
yeah, officially.
I don't see them in the next 5 or 6 years winning a Super Bowl.
No. And it was a question mark after they went to the playoffs with Mac Jones. But I think now it is not up for debate. But, all right. Let's dive into our next little topic that we got. And, I mean, this AFC is all over the place right now. You got the Chiefs and the Dolphins at 4-1. And everybody else is just kind of struggling their way through the year so far this year. I mean, a lot of teams in the AFC that we thought were going to be contenders this year are pretenders. I mean, Cincinnati had a really nice game this past week. Joe Burrow looked more like himself. Jamar Chase caught like 15 balls. I think that was the franchise record, which...
When do you double him? At what point in that game are you the Cardinals and you just say, okay, we're just going to double this guy and not let him beat us. We're going to let somebody else beat us. T. Higgins is out.
Yep.
Go ahead, Tyler Boyd. You can, or Trent Irwin. You can try and beat... I just completely dumbfounded by that coaching move to not, at any point in that game, double Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
You're just going to let him continuing to get 3 touchdowns, but you say 15 catches, just had an incredible game. Everybody thought, oh, DJ Moore, best wide receiver of the week on Thursday night. Jamar Chase said, not so fast, my friend.
Dude, and it's so ridiculous because, like, I didn't play DJ Moore in any of my matchups, and I was like, let's go. I got blessed this week because basically in all my fantasy leagues, I have the most points allowed and the top 3 or 2 or 1 in points for. So that's been me so far this year. So I was like, let's go. Didn't have to play the top fantasy performer this week. And then Jamar Chase went off for 50 in, like, 3 of my leagues I was playing against him. So, gotta love that. But, I mean, the Bengals looked better, that's for sure, but there's still some serious concern there, I think, to say the least, especially with their record, how it looks so far. The Chargers haven't played up to their ability so far this year. Herbert's banged up with a finger injury, so you got to have concerns there. Baltimore, man. I mean, Baltimore was thought to be a legitimate contender, and
the Ravens should be 5-0. The Ravens should have beat the Colts, and they should have beat the Steelers. They should be 5-0 right now. It is preposterous that not only are they not 5-0, they're not even 4-1. I don't understand how you lose that game to Pittsburgh. All you have to do if you're Lamar is not throw the pick, and then you kick the field goal. Now, Ravens fans, I'm not going to jump on Lamar too much because his receivers dropped anything and everything. Yeah. Bateman dropped one in the end zone. Andrews dropped one in the end zone.
3 drops.
Zay Flowers. And he fell one time as well. Aguilar. We talking Aguilar.
Yeah.
He can't catch nothing, man. We knew that from Philly days.
Oh,
so as much as I want to sit there and blame Lamar, yes, his wide receivers did struggle. But in the clutch, fumble and an interception.
Yep.
In the final 5 minutes of the game. You just can't do those types of things when you're in such a hotly contested defensive battle like that.
What'd you think of the zero blitz call? I think in that situation you can't do it. I mean, obviously in hindsight, it looks like it's easy to say that, but
right. I don't. I mean, clearly they knew, but I don't know. I wouldn't have done it in that situation, but I still think the Ravens are right up there with those teams. Like, if they win those 2 games, our entire opinion about the Ravens is oh man, they're right up there with the Eagles, and the 49ers is probably better than the Chiefs and the best team in football. I mean,
but I think the question, if the Ravens were 4-1 or God forbid 5-0 right now, I think the question that we're having is Lamar Jackson has not been playing like Lamar Jackson, dude.
No, he hasn't. But I still would say that this is one of the best teams in the AFC. I still think this is a team that can go out and compete or beat the Chiefs. This is a team that can go out and compete and beat the Bills, the Dolphins. I mean, they were up 21 points on the Dolphins last year and blew that game. Now, I know it's a different year, obviously, but that shows you, that they're right up there with some of the best teams in football, and they have these dumb mental late game lapses that cost them wins against these teams that they play to their competition so much. I feel they went in the last week, kicked the shit out of the Browns. That was the one time where I was like, damn, the Ravens really imposed their will. They showed that they were the better team, and they didn't play down to their competition. They smoked them. This week, complete opposite. They played right into the Steelers' hands. There's no reason why Kenny Pickett should be winning that game.
No.
Love you, Jaden, but there's no reason that the Steelers should have won that game.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it was a George Pickens single coverage, and I think we got to start having a discussion about Marlon Humphrey, man. I don't think, he's been burned.
He was coming back from injury.
Okay, but he's been burned by, I mean, I just remember Jamar Chase, basically becoming his father.
Okay. Well, George Pickens said he's a top 5 receiver in football, so, I don't know.
I mean, I think anybody looks like a top 5 wide receiver against Marlon Humphrey right now.
There it is.
It's
well, and you also said he got burned by Jamar Chase. That guy just put up a 50 burger this past week. So
but he touts himself as one of the best corners in football, and he's not.
Rightfully, yeah. No, and I agree with you on that. That there are question marks, but the foundation there for the Ravens is right where it needs to be. It's just correcting a couple of things here and there, and I think they're going to be fine. So you talk about the AFC. So we mentioned the Chiefs, and you mentioned the Dolphins. Are the Dolphins really up there? They lost to the Bills. The Bills lost to the Jags.
Yeah.
We're going to do the whole transitive property thing here. It's how far does that keep going down? Then the Jags lost to the Texans. It's how far do we keep going, before it's who really is the best team? And every team has showed their flaws. The Chiefs have been a lot better since, obviously, week 1. They got Chris Jones and Kelsey back, which rightfully made probably the biggest difference in the world for them. They lost that game to the Lions because they just dropped passes. I mean, that's really truly what it came down to on that opening game, is that they lost it because nobody could catch a ball between Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. Feel free, bud. But
waiver wire picker up of the year.
There we go. There we go. Outside of those teams, so I would say the Chiefs, Dolphins, Jags, Bills, Ravens.
I think that's it. Because the Steelers lead the division. I don't believe in them. I don't think anybody.
Bengals in there?
I know, dude. I mean,
the Bengals and Chargers are right there, I feel.
I think the Chargers are probably closer. than the Bengals, not only because they have a better record, but I mean, Staley has to turn it around. He doesn't have a choice. If he doesn't turn it around this year, if he can't get this team to the playoffs, I don't care about Justin Fields' finger injury. It's not on his throwing hand. So you should be able to execute and at least get this team to the playoffs. If he can't do it this year, then Staley's out of town. I've been saying it for a long time. He should have been fired this year.
He might already be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might already be. I mean, he made boneheaded plays in their last win against the Raiders. He made a boneheaded play against the Vikings. 4th and 1 at your own 25, up 4. What are you doing with like a minute 50 left? The Vikings have no timeouts. I understand you get the first down, the game's over. But if you don't, you're giving them the ball at the 25-yard line. And if the Vikings weren't so brain dead and such a terrible organization, they probably would have won that game.
Yeah.
The Bengals have the Seahawks at the 49ers and the Bills the next 3 games. We're going to find out a lot about this Cincinnati team because if they go 2-1 in those games, I mean, if they go 3-0, holy shit. But if they go 2-1, they're right back, man.
Oh, yeah.
They are right back in it, and there is a conversation for them to possibly be the best team in the AFC at that point.
Yeah.
I think right now it's the Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champ, tied for the best record in the AFC. And in my opinion,
you know I'm a Chiefs hater.
You know what?
You know I'm a Chiefs hater.
Do you know what separates? Do you know what separates this team from all other Chiefs team? Their defense.
Yeah.
This is the best defense that they've had since Mahomes has got there. They are stacked on every level of the defense. They are absolutely stacked. From Reed at safety to Chris Jones up front, they have everything you could want from a defense. They allowed 20 points to the Vikings this past week. That was the first time they've allowed 20 points since week 1, and they didn't have Chris Jones.
Yeah.
The other games, I think it was like 17-9 to the Jags. It was 41-10 to the Bears, and the Bears got a score with like a minute left in that game. And then who was the other game? I can't remember who the other game was that they had. Was it a divisional game? Raiders? No, I can't remember what it was. Anyways, they've done extremely well on the defensive side, which I think is a total change compared to everything else. Because it used to be.
Did you mention the Bears?
No. Yeah, I mentioned the Bears.
Okay.
But it used to be the Chiefs would just have to outscore everybody.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's we can kind of rely on our defense. When was that ever a thing with Mahomes? They beat the Jets on Sunday Night Football.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I think something that sets this team apart a little bit from the past Chiefs teams is I think Pacheco is getting better every single game. And I think that you can rely on the run game. Not rely, maybe. But I think that you can turn to the running game more than you've been able to. Yeah, for sure. And you haven't been able to do that as a Chiefs team in the past. So, personally, I'm still going the Dolphins. The Dolphins had a rough week against the Bills.
They don't have the D, man.
Okay.
They have
it on paper.
D.
And then Jalen Ramsey's going to come back.
When Ramsey comes back, yeah, let me see it. But, like if you're going to put up 70 and 40 a game against the Giants and the fucking Broncos, like, that's not really telling me much. Then you go to Buffalo, and look what happened there. Your defense allowed 6-7 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah.
I can't.
In Buffalo, which
I know, but it's also in September when the weather's nice.
Yeah.
They lucked out, the Dolphins, because they had to play New England and Buffalo on the road both in September. Both cold weather in their division that they don't have to go in November, December and play in shit weather. So they really lucked out with that. I need to see them against an upper echelon team go shot for shot with them, like the Chiefs or I would say the Bills, but the Bills kicked the shit out of them. But then the Bills lose to the Jags. So it's like, who is the best team? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm leaning the Chiefs, but I've seen their flaws too.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tough to make a decision right now. I'm not going to go Mr. Pfizer in the Chiefs. I'm going to still rock with the Dolphins.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm still.
That's got to be one of my favorite comments of the year. Is Aaron Rodgers calling him Mr. Pfizer? That was just too fucking good, dude. God.
And then they had a clip today where Pfizer released they tweeted something out of Mr. Pfizer, like a jersey, and it was Mr. Pfizer on the back, and they're playing to it, and they showed it to Rodgers, and Rodgers was just like, interesting. He was like. Such a corrupt organization. Like he started going off.
I do think it's funny. I do think it's really funny how Kelsey kind of just like played it off. Like
Yeah.
he just laughed and he was like, "Yeah, that's a good one." He's like, "I got to give him credit where credit's due." But yeah, I think the Chiefs they're one of the only teams that have really been there, whereas a lot of these teams they haven't been to the Super Bowl. I know the Bengals have, but the Bills haven't, the Ravens haven't, the Jags haven't, the Dolphins haven't. I think that really helps out, come postseason time. I personally, if it's not the Chiefs, I'm going with the Ravens still, man.
Wow.
I'm still believing in the Ravens.
Okay.
I think they're a play or two away from being 5-0. And I just got to think that this team, as long as, like, the big thing is the injuries.
Yeah.
If they can get away from this damn injury black cloud, they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I think they still win this division. And I think that they make some noise in the playoffs because I think they match up really well with a lot of these teams.
Yeah.
So if it's not the Chiefs, I'm sticking with the Ravens.
Yeah, and I think the Ravens, like, no matter how the offense looks right now, that defense is the second best defense on PFF right now overall. So, I mean, they've been balling out despite the injuries. So,
you know who's been a huge surprise? Because coming out of college, I did not think this guy was going to be that great. I thought it was like he dropped, which is why they picked him. But Kyle Hamilton, dude, has been absolutely incredible. He's been one of the best safeties in football, and I got to give the Ravens. Why would I ever question the Ravens front office when it comes to draft decisions outside of a wide receiver? I don't know.
yeah.
But I will give them an immense amount of credit because they nailed that pick.
Yeah, no, credit to the Ravens. I mean, they're always a team that's going to be in it, especially in the AFC. So, all right, let's dive into this last little headline that we got to cover. And it's one that I think is pretty interesting, man. I mean, can Indy make a run without Anthony Richardson? So unfortunately on the Indy side, their rookie quarterback who they drafted 4 overall, who has been balling out so far this year when he's been on the field, but he has not been able to stay on the field too often, and he ends up with an injury on Sunday that it's looking like it's going to keep him sidelined for 4 weeks as he's probably headed to injured reserve. So you can't love that as a Colts fan, but yeah, Jonathan Taylor come back this past week, and he's going to keep getting involved more and more. I mean, he missed all of OTAs, he missed all of training camp, he missed all of preseason, and he missed the first 4 games of the season. So he needs time to get adjusted. He needs time to get worked back into the offense. And until then, I mean, Zach Moss has looked great in his absence, dude. So,
what do you have? 2 touchdowns this past week? 100 yards?
Yeah.
Just destroyed that Titans D.
Yeah. And it was funny to look at all my sleeper feeds and see that Zach Moss was dropped right before the game. That was a lot of fun because I saw that in like 3 or 4 different leagues that I'm in. But I just think what it comes down to, I think Shane Steichen is that guy, dude. I think Shane Steichen, we didn't realize how good of a hire this was coming out of the offseason.
It was an under-the-radar one.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's the Colts.
Yep.
The Colts always hire those sneaky guys that you're just like, they're not a flashy guy.
Like Jeff
But
Saturday.
then they end up like, well, I was going to say Frank Reich. But same, but different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they do a really good job when it comes to the coaching style that they bring in and how they implement that into each and every week and each and every game. And in that division, it is kind of an up for grabs division. I still like the Jags. I think the Jags still win that division.
I just don't think the Jags
Minshew
Minshew
Mania, man.
Yeah, I mean, Minshew Mania is going to be he's here. I mean, he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts for 3 weeks. 4 weeks, but they just traded for Kellen Mond like an hour ago.
Former Viking.
Yeah. So that you gotta love that. They're stacking up their QB room in the absence of Anthony Richardson, but I don't think you need Anthony Richardson for this team to win games. I mean, Anthony Richardson exited early against Houston. He missed at Baltimore, and he exited early against Tennessee. The Colts won all 3 of those games. And
yeah, I know.
Without
and I invested a lot into Anthony Richardson in fantasy this year.
I think
it hurts me. Because I think, like you're right, when he is healthy and he's on the field, explosive, dynamic, elusive, you name it. He checks every single box that you want from a quarterback, from a dual threat quarterback. Because I'm not going to say he's run first, but it's right up there with Justin Fields.
Yeah.
He's just a lot bigger than Fields. But yeah, with this AC joint sprain, like, we saw it with Derek Carr, but this is like a grade 3, I think is what it is, whereas Carr's was like a grade 1. So he's probably going to go to short-term IR for 4 weeks, which is what I'd expect. I make the playoffs. I could see them sneaking in.
That's what
I
I'm
could see
saying.
them sneaking in as maybe a wild card team. And the reason being is because you look at the other teams that are possibly going to be wild cards: Chargers, Bills, Bengals. It's
Yeah.
them and the Bengals is basically what it's going to come down to. And the Colts schedule is a lot easier than the Bengals. As we said, the Bengals these next 3 weeks have the Seahawks, the
That's a great
49ers,
point.
and the
Yep.
Bills. Like that's very, very difficult slate there. They're still in the division. You're 100% right. They could absolutely win this division. They're already behind the 8 ball though because they did lose to the Jags.
Yeah.
Now the Jags lost to the Texans and then they beat the Titans, so it's like all 1-1. It's all a mosh pit there. But if they can beat the Jags when they play them again, it'll be in Jacksonville, which Indy I don't think has lost in Jacksonville in like 7 or 8 straight years.
Oh yeah,
It's
that's
something
right. That's one of the crazy stats, dude. Yeah.
or was it Jackson? No, Indy hasn't won there because Carson Wentz was on the
Facts.
Colts and they needed to win that game in Jacksonville and they lost. That's what it is. So maybe they can exonerate some demons
Yeah.
and win in Jacksonville for the first time in forever.
Yeah. With a new head coach, a new vibe in Indy, I think you go into Jacksonville this coming week, you beat Jacksonville, and then you go down the line. I mean, Cleveland's favored by 2.5, but the Indy's at home that next week, so they have a chance there. They play the Saints. I like the Colts in that one. They play the Panthers in Carolina. I like the Colts in that one. They play the Patriots in New England, and with New England, we were talking about it earlier, I think the Colts win that game. They play the Bucks at home. The Bucks have been really good, but I think they're pretenders. I mean, we talked a little bit about it at the
And
beginning
it's
of the pod.
in Indy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they win that game. They play Tennessee in Tennessee. That'll be a tough game, but if Indy's like winning these games as we go
They
down
always
the line,
split, man.
Yeah.
Those teams always split. Tennessee,
Vrabel.
doesn't matter who wins on the road and who wins at home, the other one will always win the next one. And then they play at the Bengals,
Yep.
which that could be for a playoff spot. And then they've got 3 of their last 4 at home against the Steelers, Falcons, Raiders, Texans. Like that's a very, very nice schedule down the stretch.
Absolutely.
The one game I'm going to circle that I think they could slip up is at the Panthers.
Ooh, in Carolina? Possibly Carolina's got 0 wins at that point.
Frank Reich revenge game.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. I mean, he's going to know.
That's going to be my pick that they might slip up right there. And I think it's, is it? No, it's 2 weeks before their bye. I was going to say, I thought it was right before their bye, but that could circle that as a possible slip up for the Colts. But yeah, no, you're right. You know, their schedule sets up really nicely. Obviously you can't just be like, oh, win. You got to take it week by week and game by game. But this week will be a big litmus test game against the Jags. It's a revenge game for Minshew.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe he's able
That's
to
true.
Minshew magic. Maybe we get some of that.
Yeah.
I really like this Jags team right now on paper, and I think
Me
they
too.
showed it last week that they're up there as one of the best teams in the AFC. You know, beating the Bills,
Okay.
and they were up in that entire game.
Yeah.
The Bills tried to make it close at the end, but they looked really good in that game.
They did. And they turned it around because the Jags had not looked like themselves for the first
Oh well, they
games
lost
of
to the
seasons.
Texans.
Yeah.
They laid an absolute egg against the Texans, and they lost. The other game they lost was to the Chiefs. So like
Yeah.
I can't really count that
Okay.
too much against them. But
That's fair.
the game against the Texans was just abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville's favored to win the division right now at -120, but I definitely can see the Colts sliding in as a wild card team in this AFC. And despite not having anything,
They could win the division. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they couldn't. I'm saying I'm taking the Jags right now.
Right.
But like if I was to pick a second team, yeah, I'd pick the Colts because I don't trust Tannehill. And as much as I like what the Texans are doing, I think
be a
they're still
fall-off.
a year or 2 away.
yeah, there's going to be
Yeah,
a fall off
I-
in Stroud at some point. He can't keep doing this. I mean, he's a rookie quarterback.
Right.
So I see a fall off at some point. And just before we wrap this up, man, I mean, you don't have to rely on Gardner Minshew when he comes in, man. I mean, you need him to
'Cause
throw.
you got Jonathan Taylor.
Exactly. You need to throw 15, 20 times a game maybe, and you have a 1-2 punch of Zach Moss, who knew that Zach Moss was good, but you got a 1-2 punch with Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, and this is a team that's top 10 in rush rate right now, and they've got the 6th best run block grade on PFF. And this is an offensive line we had serious concerns about last season, didn't play up to expectations. Looks like they're returning back to the mean this year. So if this offensive line can keep it up, I think this Colts team could be a problem as we go down through the rest of the season. So, all right, man. So I think that just about wraps us up, recapping last week's action in the National Football League. Looking forward to coming out with another episode later this week, previewing this week's coming matchups, but broke down some headlines. Looking forward to another week of NFL action. And as you mentioned, man, we're at the point in the season where we really know we're starting to get a sense of what's going to happen and who are the pretenders, who are the contenders.
I was gonna say, I think next week we got to do a contender pretender episode. We're 6 weeks into the season at that point. I think that's the perfect time to lay down, put the line in the sand and say, all right, this team is good and this team is fake good.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. So we got a little sneak preview for next week's episode. But until then, we will catch you later. Peace.